Sorry about that. Welcome back to another live from the Norwegian woods. Once again, I'm your host, Ulf Hockness from WhiteWolfAlchemy.com. And in this video, we're going to talk about the tower moments in life. You know, those moments where everything is just swiped off the table. Where the carpet is kind of pulled from underneath your feet. And, you know, as the tower is on fire, and you're having to jump to your safety. And, you know, it's all part of life. It's all part of the process of alchemy. And the more we can allow for the tower to transpire, the more you will come to find that you are aligned with your soul and less aligned with your ego. Alright? But first and foremost, as always, let's tune in to that higher self stream of consciousness so that you can receive this video from your higher self. As I like to tune in, just tune into that heart center, tune into that source intelligence, that stream of consciousness. Take one deep breath in through the nose for mind. All the way down, hold it at top for 1, 2, and hold for body and through the nose. Hold it at top. 1, 2, and one for spirit in through the nose. Nice and easy. Calm, cool, and collected. And connected. Alright. So, you know, I've had a few of those moments in my life. Tower moments. And every time it's a level up. It may not feel like it at the time, but as you allow the debris and the smoke to settle, you'll come to find in the rubble of the crumbling tower, you will find treasure. You will come to find things more aligned with your soul rather than your big fat ego. So, you know, I had a Kundalini awakening when I was 27, 28-ish, somewhere around that time. And I just lost all my friends. All my friends were removed from my life. Everything that I knew, I could no longer go clubbing. I could no longer go and party, because the Kundalini energy just wouldn't let me. It wouldn't let me do anything of party favors that I needed in order for me to sustain these activities. And so my whole life changed. Within a few months, I did not recognize my life. I felt lonely. I felt left behind. I felt insane because of the Kundalini syndrome. I felt highly imbalanced, and I just couldn't, you know, I just could not accept. It was so hard for me to accept that my entire life had flipped. That everybody that I knew and loved and was hanging out with, all my friends, was no longer calling me or coming around. I was no longer partying and seeing lots of people. I was no longer one of the cool hip kids, you know, kids at 27, 28, mind you. So I was no longer part of the it crowd that was doing all the cool shit and all the cool expensive designer drugs and partying and going to all the fancy clubs and VIPs and after parties and all that stuff. And you know, I could no longer listen to that music. It was so triggering. I just felt like I was missing out all the time. All the time. I just felt like, damn, everybody's partying, everybody's having a good time, dancing, fucking gorgeous chicks, you know, having a real ball of time. And here I was just, you know, having Kundalini syndrome and wondering if I'm hearing voices and, you know, just a real shit show. But after a while, I realized it was a blessing. This whole thing that felt like a curse in the beginning started to become a blessing. Because I realized, you know, I wouldn't have lasted long in the environment that I was in. My life would have just kept. I would have kept destroying my liver, my kidneys, my heart, my brain, you know. So for me it was a blessing in disguise, but I didn't quite fully get it until life started becoming very, very peaceful. So much peace, rather than the drama of the it crowd, you know, so much drama all the time. And I realized that the price I had paid was significant, but the reward was even more significant. I was finding treasure. In my consciousness, I was finding treasure. In my life, I was finding treasure. In just those moments of, you know, absolute transcendent peace. Sitting outside in my yard and realizing, you know, nobody's going to call me. I had no friends at that time. Nobody's going to call me because my sober friends and my old drinking buddies and stuff, they sure as shit wasn't calling me to hang out because I was a crazy drug addict before that time. So they didn't even come around. Nobody came around. So I was sitting there, you know, nobody's going to call me. Nobody's going to take me somewhere. I'm not going to run into anybody who's going to want to hang out either. It's going to be very, very peaceful for a while. And I thought my life was going to be like that forever, and got a little bit depressed from that. But then eventually, you know, it's like you surrender to the idea of... First, I surrendered to the idea of my life being a living hell forever due to the Kundalini syndrome or the psychosis. I realized, okay, I'm going to be fucking paranoid forever. I'm going to be... which wasn't true. But it felt like that at the time. I was going to be experiencing this mental and emotional turmoil forever. Which I didn't, but it felt like it at the time. So I think the fact that I surrendered to my own private hell helped me to transcend it. And then when I had transcended it, my warrior spirit kicked in, and I was like, damn, I'm gonna live just in spite of everyone who hates me. I'm gonna live just in spite. I'm gonna live just to prove them all wrong. And I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna fight for my mental health. I'm gonna fight for my physical well-being. I'm gonna fight to beat all the side effects from all the drugs that I had been put on while I was in rehab, which was awful. And so little by little, the warrior spirit kept taking me to a better place. And I noticed it was a constant trajectory of moving up, leveling up. And then, I met this alcoholic, pill popping girl, and we moved out on an island here in Norway. I had a slight relapse, for 6, 7, 8 months with her, and then just had one of those epiphanies again, where I was like, oh my God, I gotta get her out of my life, or it's just gonna be the peace that I experienced on my own, all alone, was way more valuable than company. So I had found self-love, more self-love than I had ever had before. So being in my own energy, my own consciousness, spending time with myself was more valuable than being around other people or having a girlfriend, toxic girlfriend. I was toxic too, but I was on the mend. I was leveling up. I wasn't quite as toxic as her. I wasn't quite where she was at. So the vibration didn't really match. And so, that's how it always goes. And then the warrior spirit kicked in again, and I leveled up even further on my own, quite fast then, because I had also been doing a little bit of work, facing my fears and moving out of, my old patterns and anxieties and things. And so I was still, I let go of her, and just fell in love with my music again, with my talents, gifts, and trades. Really enjoyed that. And then I had a soul-to-soul connection. And another Kundalini awakening. And it once again swiped everything off the table. All of a sudden I found myself in Florida, having had agoraphobia just a few years later, having had fear of flying, fear of heights, most of my life. And so I found myself to be very, very courageous all of a sudden, very, very brave, very courageous. And I realized, I gotta live before I die. And if I die now, at least I will have lived. And so my whole mentality changed. Everything changed. The people around me once again changed. And I let go very, very easily at this point. More of the people that were more my drinking buddies and not drug addicts came back into my life. And, you know, I started being able to have a good time again. Just drinking and not letting it go further. Just having a few beers and having a good time and being able to hang out. And then I, of course, married this girl in Florida. It all turned into a shit show. And then I started studying with this awesome healer and teacher, spiritual teacher in Canada, Mel Brand from Meridian Energetics and Gold Ray Twin Flames, and it just changed everything. The inner child work that I did with him just made me let go of a lot of addiction fully and finally, like love addiction especially, in such a way that I would, you know, would stay in something that I didn't really enjoy because of a label or because of trauma bond. And then I left her, and then everything changed again. And 4 or 5 years down the road, when I met Mary, she experienced the same. You know, but that's her story to tell. But I would tell a little bit of it because I was part of it. And you know, all the people that she had in her surrounding had an agenda. And so anyone with an agenda will be just swiped off the table. They will not be allowed to be around you once you step into your soul self. All those people that are not good for you, that have an agenda, or that are talking shit behind your back, all that shit will come to the surface and be known to you. Those that are not good for you, the narcissists and everything, will just be wiped away. And you might be lonely for a while. You might be not seeing a fulfillment of, you know, your dreams and passions and things that were coming from the old self, the wounded self, coming from the one that belongs in the matrix. You know, that guy in the matrix that is having that gray soup-like shit, and he wants to go back into the matrix and have a freaking steak, right? That's going to be you. You're awakened to your soul self, and you know that, you know, those old dreams and goals that you'd set yourself, they're not in alignment with who you are anymore, and they will never come to fruition. Higher self and your soul has another plan for you, and so you have to surrender to that. You have to surrender to the fact that you're no longer who you used to be. You're no longer who you thought yourself to be, and you're no longer this matrix-aligned person. You are stepping into your divine blueprint. And so you have to recreate yourself, reinvent yourself. You have to come to know yourself. That's why they say know yourself, know thyself in the Alchemy, because you have to know the soul self, not the ego, not that conditioned, programmed, patterned being that fits in with culture and fits in with the it crowd and the cool kids. It's that spiritually mature person you're going to have to get to know, figure out. what is it that that person wants? They're not going to want to hang out with the potheads. They're not going to want to go to the bar and drink all the time. They're not going to want to, waste their life away, waste their potential. They're not going to be in self-sabotage and self-pity and self-importance. That's not the soul. That's the ego. And so, you have to be okay with things no longer, looking the way they used to. You have to come to be okay with your old plans not being aligned with you. And so you have to figure out who am I really? What do I really want? Where am I going to go from here? And so I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to play in a rock band. I wanted to, make psychedelic trance and just make music all the time. It didn't matter to me if somebody heard it. Truly, I really just made music for me. But my soul, my higher self, had other plans for me. I wasn't going to be a rock star in this life. I've already done that gig. That's what my soul remembers. But I was meant to be doing this. I was meant to be a soul mentor, soul healer. I was meant to share my experience, my mental health journey, my Kundalini awakening. I was meant to share my spiritual journey and to assist others with their spiritual journey. I was meant to be a modern mystic. I was meant to be a shaman. I was meant to be an alchemist. And so all of that started coming through slowly and surely with my second Kundalini awakening, more so. It did a little bit from the first one. It's like Dark Night of the Soul, initiations, and all kinds of shit. Absolute fucking horror for years. 3 years of absolute mental horror and soul torment to make me into the diamond that I was supposed to become. And diamonds are made under pressure, so you have to get used to the pressure if you're going to shine, or rather reflect as diamonds do. Rihanna had it all wrong. Shine bright like a diamond? No, bitch. That diamond's just reflecting shit. Diamonds only reflect, they don't shine. So, in order to be a diamond, I had to be under pressure. I had to love being under pressure. I had to surrender to the fact that, I was not the one in the driver's seat anymore, and I probably never had been. I was a schmuck before my awakening. Absolute. Mentally, not all there. Because of my traumas, because of all the drugs, because of my PTSD from my whole life. I was not all there. My reality and the actual reality was very, very different, as it is for most of you until you awaken fully. Like what you spend time with up in your head and what's actually going on in your life is two very separate things until you do the work. You're going to be living in delusions, illusions, and not seeing things clearly. You're not going to see people for who they are. You're going to have your rose-tinted glasses on and be like, I'm going to give him a chance. I love him so much. And he abuses the shit out of you for years. And you're just like, oh. So no. No, you don't know. You don't know what you want. You don't know who you are. You don't know your dreams and your passions because they are saturated by your wounds. They are saturated by your trauma. You have no clue. You got culture and the matrix telling you what you want to do, what your dreams are. I want to be famous. I want to be famous like Kylie Jenner and all these other asshats that have no fucking talents whatsoever, but they're just famous for being famous. You know? And so you want that. You want that because it looks so, you know, celebrity culture is a parasite. Celebrity culture is a parasite, and it's telling you what you want, what your passions are, what your dreams are, and goals, but nope, that's not it. That's the parasite. And it's gonna steal your heart, your soul, your light, if you let it. Your soul and your higher self has other plans for you. There's some latent talents and gifts and traits underneath that conditioned self that we call the divine blueprint. And you have to remove the conditioned self, the patterns, the programs, the templates of popular culture in order to get to that divine blueprint. And that's not going to be what you thought it was. It's not going to be, you know, in service to self. It's going to be in service to the all. And through that service to the all, you're going to come to find, oh shit, so much more beauty there than what my ego would have wanted for me. So much more beauty there than your conditioned self could have ever thought of or dreamt of. You'll come to have spiritual riches rather than matrix riches. You're going to be wealthy, spiritually speaking, and you're going to have a peace and a sense of self and soul that is truly enviable, that is truly worthy of envy. Trust you me. And you could sit there with an empty wallet and be in lack of nothing. Because you have something inside you that cannot be taken from you, that cannot be bought, that cannot be schooled, trained. It can only be earned through hard-ass fucking spiritual work. And then nobody can take it from you. Nobody. The divine blueprint is there to stay. But it comes with work. It comes with soul work. You're going to have to remove all those patterns from your ancestral bloodline that you took on from childhood. You're going to have to remove all those layers of programming from the cultural parasite, popular culture. You know, all the cool kid stuff. You're going to have to remove all those templates from porn, from the rock stars, the addiction templates, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll shit. You know, you're going to have to remove the templates from fashion, That's bullshit. That's psychosis. Fashion is psychosis. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, celebrity culture is psychosis. Your music, your books, your TV shows, all that is psychosis. And while you can certainly entertain yourself at time, you will enter containment, enter the entertainment with lucidity and be like looking at a show and see all their patterns and programs, all their dysfunctions. You're not going to be able to enjoy it in the same way that you used to. You're not going to be able to hang out with your friends in the same way that you used to. You're going to start analyzing. You're going to start spotting. I call it program spotting. I call it pattern spotting, much like train spotting. But it's it has a Jungian twist to it, you know. So you start to see the archetypes in your friends. Oh, this is some Cinderella shit she got going on. This bitch thinks she's Snow White. You know, this fucker thinks he's a knight in shining armor. Or his fucking Aladdin. You know, this kind of stuff. Odin, Jesus, Messiah complex. I think they're Freya, Aphrodite, Mary Magdalene, Marilyn Monroe. We have a few of those. You know, all the archetypes throughout the tarot embodied at different times throughout life. And you start to recognize them in people. And you start to see things for how they truly are. And it's a blessing in disguise. At first it feels like a curse, because, you know, everything was so much more dark than you thought it was, because you had rose tinted glasses on and you were fooling yourself. Trauma and everything was, you know, so but then the glasses come off, and then the harsh reality of everything is a lot to take in. But eventually you'll grow a little bit thicker skin, and you'll be able to deal with it. You'll be able to, okay, I see this person for who they truly are. I can see their agenda with me. I can see their intent. I can smell their intentions, and I don't like it. I'm not going to allow them into my life. And so you're free of some lessons. And you get to keep your blessings a little bit more than you would have had you not, you know, seen things for how they truly are. So it is a blessing in disguise. And you will come to find that you get to keep more of your energy. You get to keep more of your blessings. You'll have less shitty people in your life. You'll have less drama in your life. And you may be feeling, you know, like it's a lonely ride at times, but at least you're not surrounded by toxic people anymore. So, and you're less toxic, because you can no longer excuse yourself. You excuse your behavior. You can no longer live with yourself and your bullshit. So you start to heal, and you start to figure out, oh my god, I'm a toxic shit too. It wasn't just my partner. I was one too. I better fucking deal with this shit if I want to have a good relationship. And so you do. So you enter into spiritual maturity, spiritual accountability, and you start to become accountable for, you're no longer a victim. You used to be, oh my God, this person did this and that, and you're in denial of how you co-created it. But you can no longer be in denial now, after the tower moment, after you start to see things for how they truly are. You can no longer be in denial, so you're going to have to, work on those issues you got. Which is a beautiful thing, because it means that you can have healthier relationships now. It means that you can have more mature connections. It means that you will experience life how it truly is, rather than the illusions and delusions of the Matrix. My beautiful partner is having an online event, and you can find out more about that on whitewolfalchemy.com. And we are transitioning over to YouTube, so please subscribe to our YouTube channel. The link is in the pinned comment down below, and most of the lives will be coming through there, and the occasional live here on Facebook as well, just until we have transitioned. So, I appreciate you all very much. If you have not experienced your tower moment yet, this video probably will not make as much sense to you, but if you have already experienced it, this video will be fully in resonance. And yeah, I hope that life is good to you now, and I hope that you are good to you now. And if you need help with your process of alchemy, you know where to find me. whitewolfalchemy.com. I look forward to hearing from you.